Hi, welcome to the Drama-Free Living Podcast. It's Dennis and Lisa McIntee. And Lisa, this has been super fun, this conversation. We're in the middle of pitfalls of delegation and accountability. And last week's podcast was all about lack of trust, which is a huge pitfall, and this fear of losing control. But there's other pitfalls. And so, Lisa, we want to kind of jump into some of those, but just remind us a little bit why we're here.
Why we're here. When we lead an organization, it's very difficult to do a good job and keep everything in mind, to be able to delegate well and to not keep control, to be able to hold our team accountable and not just dump. And so
I'm so glad I don't dump.
You have learned not to dump as much. But one of the things we asked one of our roundtable clients, we said, hey, we're going to be talking about delegation, we're talking about accountability, we're talking about the pitfalls and the problems. And tell us something that you've really found is a key for that. And he said, it always takes so much time to do, but man, it works so well when I do it. And there was some pain in his voice when he was talking about it takes so much time because he's going and he's blowing and he's doing, and he's been leading this organization for quite some time. And it takes time, and he's been leading this organization for decades, and he still has to take the time to spend the time to delegate, to hold them accountable. But man, when you do it and you do it well, it's so worth it.
Well, Lisa, and I'm reminded of this conversation that I had with a client one time, and here's what she told me: is she runs a pretty good sized organization. She said that's when you first came in and started putting some of these processes and systems in place. I felt like we were slowing it down. We're going slower, but she said now we go so fast, right? And it's this whole idea. Sometimes you have to slow it down to go fast, and investing that time up front. Right? It's like we want to get it done faster, quicker, better, just always like faster, faster, faster. Well, sometimes we have to slow it down in order to go fast. And so I just want to encourage you to invest that time, right? And so some of these things, I think that's the pain sometimes of the delegation accountability piece that is so necessary.
And what you're saying, sometimes we have to slow it down to go fast. So Dennis, you recently ran a half marathon, and you've done several. I've done one, but hey, that's great. And one thing about it is the most recent half marathon you did, it was on the heels of a previous half marathon.
Bad mistake for me.
And so not running the half marathon, that was not the bad mistake, but assuming that you could kind of skip steps and you didn't have to properly train. Yeah. And so you sped up the training platform and the training regimen for this half marathon. And you got three-quarters of the way through it, and we're totally gassed because
I didn't invest the time up front. I just assumed because I had ran one 2 months earlier. I'd assumed, come on, you don't assume, but we all assume sometimes. And I just assumed that training that
you did previously, and then the year before that, and the year before that, all of these having done this over and over and over, assuming I know what to do, I can just jump in, I can skip a couple steps. And that's the problem.
Yeah, and that's the lie. Many times we try to skip a couple steps. So we want to kind of talk through like some of these pitfalls and make sure that because if you skip a step, you're probably going to fall into one of these pitfalls. And so we want to just kind of get them out there. They're really like, we call them pitfalls, but just do the opposite, okay? Just do the like lack of trust will build trust, right? Fear of losing control. Well, just stay in charge, but give control away. And so we want to kind of talk about a couple others, but there's an Harvard Business Review. I almost said HBR, right? Harvard Business Review, they did this recent survey of time management, and they found that close to half of these companies, 332 companies surveyed, were concerned, these CEOs were concerned about their employees' delegation skills. And I think especially as CEOs, we lead leaders who lead other people. And we've even seen this with our team is that we have team members and we have people that relate to us, and then they also have their own team that they're developing. And it's this idea we've talked to them about, hey, listen, this is you're in charge of this, but you have to give the control away of this. It's like you have to give this to these two or three other people on your team. Now I'm going to hold you, in charge, and in our team meeting, I'm going to talk to you. I'm not going to talk to this other team member, but you have to work on your delegation too.
Absolutely. And one of these pitfalls is lack of communication or poor communication. And I'm thinking, communication again, we know communication is important and we got it. Well, that's one of those things that it's really easy to let slide because it's so common knowledge. It is so important and everybody knows that we need to have good communication, right? But when we communicate or and we're going through and we're doing a great job communicating, it's like, those corn mazes back, in the fall in the cornfields. And it's just this incredible, there's these stalks of corn, they're so tall and you cannot see through it. And you're just, okay, I'm going here and here. And you can navigate by sound, you can navigate by the sun. Well, when you don't communicate, it's like going through one of those mazes blindfolded.
Now, when you said this, I immediately thought about a couple projects that I did not communicate well on. And I thought, I probably have a couple of team members that maybe they're inside the maze right now and they got blindfolds on.
They're blindfolds. And do you know what it causes? Being blindfolded in a corn maze is confusion. It's frustration. And then really, when you compare it to delegation in a company, the delegation and the accountability, they really suffer because there's confusion and we're not sure what the heck we're doing. We don't know where we're going. And then when we get confused and we can't do the things that we're supposed to do, we just get frustrated.
Yeah. And how many times we get frustrated with team members and really it's our own fault. I'm frustrated at a team member, but it's really because I have not communicated correctly in a way that they understood.
Yeah. So when communication breaks down, tasks become muddled, expectations are unclear, and accountability becomes a game of hot potato.
Okay, how many times is that right? It's like it's being passed around. It's like, no, you're in charge. No, you're in charge. You're right.
And nobody wants to be left holding the bag.
Nobody wants to be left holding the potato.
Nobody wants to be left because you know what? Whoever's left holding the potato, heads are going to roll.
And we don't even know what that means. But heads are rolling, okay?
Heads are rolling, and nobody wants. So if there's not clear communication and somebody's left holding the bag, they're like, okay, I guess you're it this time.
Yeah, well, and think about how lonely that feels. Right? Think about how team members, they feel lonely, discouraged, despondent, right? They have all of these sort of sick feelings inside their stomach that it's like, and really we could have circumvented that. Like we could have, we've created this scenario for our teams. So we have to really step back and just take an honest look at ourselves and go, hey, what have I done to sort of aid and sort of create this scenario?
Absolutely. So in order to help increase the speed of communication, we've got 3 things they're pretty simple and you already know them, but
we just want to remind you.
When you implement them, they're so valuable. And the first thing is, we've all heard the statement, clarity is kindness.
Thank you, Brene Brown.
Actually, she got it from Alcoholics Anonymous.
Oh my gosh, really? I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Okay.
She originally heard that from Alcoholics Anonymous.
Thank you, Bill W.
And clarity is kindness. So in a professional arena, clarity is professional kindness. And clarity helps us to define our roles, our responsibilities, and our expectations for each team member and each task and each project. So it's those roles, those responsibilities, those expectations when we communicate it clearly.
Now, listen, when we talk about communication, we're not just saying verbal, but many times written communication. And Lisa, when I write out like my expectations and best result, worst result, success criteria, it's fascinating. Projects go so much better.
Also, we have a lot of things that we utilize to help us communicate well. We'll do Zoom calls. We're a remote team.
Yeah.
And we'll do Zoom calls. We'll do phone calls. We'll do face-to-face meetings when we're all together. Yeah. But we also use Slack as a communication channel. We use Trello as a project management.
And we also have tools like the intention clarifier that really bring out, when it's written down, people understand, okay, that's what you mean.
Absolutely. And our team says, hey, Dennis, could you just do an intention clarifier for us, please, on this? So we actually can have clearly set understanding of what's going on. And when we're communicating clearly, this is really key. It's context and it's intent, but it's using clear, concise language to convey instructions and objections. It's leaving no room for ambiguity or misunderstanding. So a lot of times we think, okay, I told you it, you understand, got it. But sometimes there needs to be a little bit of back and forth on, this is what I said. And then the other person comes back and say, okay, if I'm understanding it right, this is the expectations, this is the timeline, and this is what's going on. And that time is vital. It takes a couple extra minutes, but it could save you going beyond your deadline by several weeks.
Well, and listen, when it's not clear to you, you can't communicate it clearly. And I think the mistake a lot of leaders make is they tend to get with their team and they brainstorm in public. And then your team thinks they don't know you're brainstorming. They don't know you're just trying to get clear for yourself. And so they take a piece of information and they just run with it. And then they've just burned time, and you come back a week later, because this has happened to me. And I said, you just spent 10 hours on what? Well, I was just talking about an idea. I wasn't serious. I just wanted. And so, listen, as CEOs, we have to be very, very careful that, we define the context. Like, hey, well, let's just brainstorm about this idea. Or, hey, I'm really serious. I've already thought about it, and it's clear to me. Lisa, I'll never forget. This is probably 25 years ago. We were driving with a friend, and I remember we were driving. Just tell you where it is. We were driving between Szczecin, Poland, and Berlin, Germany. We were taking a trip, and I remember we were driving in this van. It was late at night, and I was just kind of just throwing up on this person a little bit, just kind of just talking, and he
you were verbally processing.
Yeah, throwing up is probably a bad word, but I was just verbally processing, and I remember him looking at me, just kind of confused, and he says, and I asked him, I said, well, is it not clear to you? And he says, well, is it clear to you? And I was like, no, it's not clear to me. But
hey, you did his voice really well there.
I did okay, yeah. But it's this idea is that you as the leader, as the CEO, you get clarity first, right? You get clarity before you communicate to your team, because if not, it just creates confusion, and clarity is kindness.
And if you're a verbal processor, it's super important to have those times to be able to process externally. But you always need to preface the conversation with, okay, this is an idea time. This is an idea exchange. I'm going to just verbally process here and get all of these thoughts out, and just hold on, because we're not ready to run with any of these. And Working Genius has been amazing for us, because we've known, okay, what stage of the project are we at? Okay, are we at the stage that we're galvanizing and we're just checking the boxes, or are we still creating? And if you're still creating, you can't run with it. And so knowing what stage you are in the process is super important for clear communication.
Well, Lisa, I've even seen this. I have frustration sometimes with different team members, because they want to, pick it apart, and we're still in the brainstorming phase. But they don't realize it. And a little bit, here's the thing, that's my responsibility to tell them, hey, hold on, we're still in the brainstorming phase. Instead of, sometimes it's been known to happen that I'll just get mad about it, and I have to realize that, hey, listen, I have a part to play in this. I have to let them know, hey, this is still the brainstorming phase. Just hold your questions for another day or next week or maybe for an hour. And as the CEO, we all have to step back and go, hey, this is the phase that this communication is in right now. And just be really clear about that.
Absolutely. And then another aspect of that is, because you are a galvanizer, you're invention in galvanizing,
you'll have the best one ever.
You'll have this great idea and be like, okay, let's go and run with it. And when the idea, it's not ready for it to move to that next phase of, okay, we're going to implement it right now. And so being able to know what phase we're in is incredibly beneficial in the process of moving a project forward. Because before we understood this concept, I'm thinking of all of the different times that we went through and we galvanized, or you galvanized, and got the ball rolling on something that it wasn't ready to roll with. I mean, I'm thinking of this last fall.
I know what you're thinking about. You might as well just tell the story. Or you want me to start it?
You go ahead. You start the story. Because I see
that face, right? I know it. So the story is that Lisa, you were on a trip with your sister in Europe and in England and in Italy. So you were gone. And
this just happened this fall.
Yeah. Well, and sometimes when you go, I get creative ideas. I don't have a problem with ideas. And
the ideas, that's not the problem. It's running with them that we're like, hang on, we're not ready to go yet.
So I basically met with a team member, and we came up with this idea.
It was a great idea.
It was a great idea. We came up with this idea, and we started to run with it. We put a strategy, put a plan together.
Had dates,
had everything set up. And
even had the marketing material ready.
Yeah, because we're selling this thing. We're excited. We're galvanizing.
It's going to help so many people.
Oh, it's going to be fantastic. And I remember you came back, and
I was only gone 2 weeks.
A lot can happen in 2 weeks, okay? It's a fast-moving organization.
Do not leave your CEO alone for 2 weeks.
Well, things could go wrong, right? And so I remember you came back, you looked in Slack, it was a couple days after you were back, and you were like, what the heck is this? what are we doing? And you started to go, do we have this in place? Do we have this in place?
Okay, like, I was not quite that harsh.
No, but you said one thing that was so funny. And literally I felt like a little kid. You said, hey, does Nancy know about this? And Nancy's our COO, right? Nancy's the person.
And she was not on the trip to Europe. She was
there.
She was in office.
Said, you're right. And you said, does Nancy know about this? And I kind of sheepishly said, no, we just didn't really include her in the conversation.
Intentionally did not let her in on it.
We intentionally didn't tell her about this conversation because we wanted to run with this idea ourselves.
Because it was such a great idea.
Yeah, and it crashed and burned.
Well, yeah.
But that's okay.
It'll be I
revived.
Think it was more that we reined the horses in before they completely got lost.
Yeah, so that's a great example of just like communication run amok. And so running your process, working with your team, and and just really just being very clear on your communication.
And along with that, another aspect of really good communication is to establish regular check-ins. I mean, this is such a simple concept, but how often do we just let them run by the wayside? It's like, how often do we know, hey, I just need to stay away from fried foods if I'm going to really watch what I'm eating and stay away from extra sugar. And you know what we do? We go to a restaurant and we're like, oh, let's get the fried chicken and the French fries along the side. It's that kind of thing. You know it. Establishing regular check-ins. Communication is not a one and done. It requires ongoing maintenance and nurturing, and it doesn't matter how many times you've said it. It still has to happen regularly. And even when you think, I've communicated it clearly and I don't need to check in because things are running smoothly, take heed, because that's when things are going to happen. When you start canceling meetings and you start canceling check-ins because you're thinking everybody understands and this project is on track. If you have a meeting set up and it's for a check-in on a particular project that you're running and things are running smoothly, do not cancel the meeting. Hold the meeting, keep the meeting, and get into that meeting and say, okay, I really don't know if we have anything to meet here on. And take a couple minutes, and before you just assume that we're good, check in with everyone, because inevitably there are going to be check-ins. There's going to be status updates to keep everyone on the same page, because this provides an opportunity to address any issues and address any roadblocks, to course correct if necessary, and to reinforce accountability. But if you just decide, hey, this project is running smoothly, we don't even need this meeting, that's when you're going to have the problems, because you don't know what some of the team members are running up against in the process of this project.
Well, Lisa, you know what I realize is that our best clients, and we've talked a lot, even in the roundtable, about what does like one-on-ones look like, what do regular check-ins look like. And, as you're saying this, I just realized that the clients with the best teams and the fastest running, that are really like moving forward very quickly, they're very systematic with their check-ins. They have a process for their check-ins. They have certain things that they do in their check-ins. They have an agenda for their check-ins. So I just want to encourage you, it's super powerful. Right, just having an agenda and having regular scheduled check-ins with your team, super, super powerful, and just having that clear communication.
Absolutely. And then the next part of communicating well and not letting it be a pitfall for delegation and accountability would be the concept of feedback, creating a culture of feedback. Feedback, it's the lifeblood of communication. It's the give and take, and it's encouraging a culture where feedback flows freely, both upward and downward. You are not separate and away and set aside and perfect. You need feedback too as a leader, and your team does. And so when you encourage that, and when your team knows, hey, I'm not perfect and I do need you to come to me, but providing constructive feedback, it helps your team know that the project is running, that their performance is what it needs to be, and it gives areas for strengths. It gives strengths and it gives areas for improvements. And it also just welcomes perspectives and it welcomes ideas.
Well, and here's the thing. The thing that people need the most, the thing that CEOs need the most is constructive feedback on their own behavior. And one of the greatest things you can have in an organization is truth tellers, but people have to feel safe to be able to say the truth. And so working to create that culture and that place of safety so that you do get the feedback. And even that's what I love about some of the roundtable participants is that they really get into each other's lives and they give feedback on their behavior, and they hear things that they say to their team and they're like, hey, you shouldn't, what the heck? and they can call people out on that, but they built that culture around them and they built the relationships around them. So who do you have in your life that'll really tell you the truth? And I think the higher you go, the harder that is. I'm thinking about one CEO that we work with, and he sort of sits in an ivory tower and he doesn't really get the feedback. And I think, when you look at his whole entire life, it's a little shallow in a lot of areas. It's not quite as rich and quite as deep. And it really is because he doesn't know what he doesn't know. And he's not getting the feedback. So continue to reach out for it because feedback feeds. That's the key. Feedback always feeds.
Absolutely. And with communication, it's not just about words. It's creating shared understanding and empowering your team to excel together.
Yeah, and we've already kind of talked about this, but let's just kind of dive a little bit into this. Is that another pitfall is this really reluctance to invest time up front. And I think this becomes because of some of the time constraints, right? Tight schedules, tight deadlines.
Well, and so much on your shoulders.
Yeah, and you perceive that you don't have time. It's almost like exercise. Lisa, when I am so busy that I feel like I don't have time to go for a run, that's the day that I go for a run. Right? When you are so busy that you feel like I can't delegate, I don't have time to explain this, that's the time that you need to. That's the one that you need to step back. And really these constraints, they're perceived time constraints, right? Really, what really has to be done today? Really? I mean, a lot of times, or we put these time constraints on ourselves, right? We put these expectations on ourselves that aren't even real. And the thing that cannot be met ever is an expectation that you have not voiced. But how many times do we have this expectation for our teams that we've never voiced to them? It's what at least I love with the intention clarifier, because one thing that we added to it is we added urgency and time frame, right? Rate the urgency. Because the reality is that there are competing priorities, right? And maybe something is a 1 today and something is a 5, but tomorrow that 5 could all of a sudden move to a 1. And that thing that was a 1 kind of can take a back seat. So being able to really prioritize, huge skill.
Well, and especially if you as a CEO or as a leader, you're a quick start and you want it going right away. And your team is like, well, wait a minute, I thought yesterday it was this. And so being able to, with this new idea or with this concept, being able to specifically say this is the urgency and this is the time frame.
And this is why it is urgent.
And it gives the team clarity on, okay, where do I put this in my line of tasks that I have to get done?
Well, and being able to explain the why it's so urgent is really helpful for leaders, right? Because in your mind, you can think it's real urgent, but as you start to explain, I mean, how many times have I come to the team, Lisa, and everything's urgent, right? My hair's on fire all the time. Any project, like we got to get it. And you just simply ask the question, well, why is it so urgent? And I start to explain it, and then I sit back and go, you know what? It's not as urgent as I think it really needs to be. It's not that important. It's like really the expectation, is for next week, not today.
And another aspect of that is our team comes and it says, okay, I have these tasks, I have these projects I'm working on. Tell me where this fits in on these projects. Is this particular thing that you have just come up with that you're so excited and you want it done tomorrow? Is it above what I'm actually working on right now?
Yeah, and I think as CEOs, we have to help people prioritize. It's part of our responsibility to help people prioritize. So perceived, and I said not just time constraints, but perceived time constraints. And then overconfidence in team's ability, in your team's competence, right? Really being able to know from your team and know what you're going to get and what you're not going to get. And we're going to cover in some other podcasts just about how you match sort of talent with the job is real important. But Lisa, I mean, there's certain team members that I know what we have. And how many times does frustration happen when it's like, I'm trying to get orange juice from an apple. Well, and I really need orange juice, but man, I got an apple here.
Right. And you, along with a lot of leaders, you just really believe in the power of your team, and you really believe in the power of the individual, and think that we can actually do more than we can, or that we're better than we are. Now, there's some CEOs, some leaders that think that their team can't do anything, but I think most good leaders, I'm thinking of all the different people, the different CEOs and leaders that are in our roundtable, and they really truly believe in the power of their team.
They do.
And the individuals that are in their team. And sometimes you think that we have skills and abilities that we don't really have.
Right. So stop expecting orange juice from your apples. Okay. If you got apples, go get the best apple juice you can. Okay. Get the best apple juice you can, but don't try to get orange juice. You got to go to that orange tree. So maybe, you need a bunch of different trees if you want a bunch of different kind of juice. So really having overconfidence. And then the last one, Lisa, that really kind of has this reluctance is that you assume people understand. That assume. Mm-hmm. Right? Is that you think it's this way, and the reality is it's a completely different way. And so it's this whole idea of the only expectations you can't meet, nobody can meet, are the ones that are never voiced. And part of it is that we have to share our expectations and then get them out and then have a reality check.
And allow for the back and forth of questions.
Yeah, because how many times, do we give tasks? Because, Lisa, here's the problem with CEOs, and I've realized for me is that, Lisa, it does not take me long to fill the team's schedule. I can have a 10-minute conversation and just fill somebody's time for like the next week. And then I don't realize, and I come back tomorrow and I got 10 other things that are ideas, and I just overload them. And I just assume that they understand. So it's this idea is that, you can create a lot of work for people, and you just got to understand that, hey, if we're going to do this, then if we say yes to this, then we're saying no to these 2 or 3 other things. And as a CEO, that's something that you have to help your team with, really help them prioritize.
Absolutely, because we have limited time, we have limited team, we have limited energy, and we have limited finances. And we can do anything with these aspects of our company, but we cannot do every single idea that the C-suite comes up with.
Yeah.
We have to filter those into, okay, how does this fit into the vision?
Yeah, at least we got a helpful tool for people today. It's called the Focus Leader 5-Day Challenge. So we'll put a link there, but we want to encourage you to go sign up for the Focus Leader Challenge. It's 5 days, 5 quick strategies, and it really helps you with goal alignment. Right? To look at like, hey, this is the team I have, and how do I align these goals with that team? So you're going to get 5 strategies that's going to help you in your leadership. And if you're lacking focus, kind of some of that, it's not quite sure what to do, the Focus Leader 5-Day Challenge, because we found that the number one thing really CEOs and leaders need is they got to get their focus, right? It's the thing you have to protect is your focus. So we'll put it there in the show notes. It's our gift to you. Lisa, big takeaway. What are you thinking? Like, what's hitting your head today?
Just that sometimes we think that we've got it all put together as far as communication, and things are running so well that we put them on cruise control. Yeah. And we don't keep our foot on the gas to kind of control that according to how much energy we have or what's going on or how much our speed of communication. And when we put it on cruise control, we kind of take our eyes off of it. We don't have to pay attention as much to what the speedometer is saying. Yeah. And that's when problems start to come up. It's
really good. I think for me, when you started to talk about feedback, because sometimes I kind of shy away from feedback. It's been known to happen. And realizing that, feedback is not fatal. Feedback is not fatal. And feedback, even things that you don't want to hear, it should feed you. It should feed you, and it is just information. So go get some more information. So here's a quick question for you to walk away with. It's like, what do you need to do to increase feedback in your life? Personal feedback, professional feedback. What do you need to do so that you get more feedback and kind of can look at those blind spots? Awesome. So if you haven't gotten the Focus Leader 5-Day Challenge, go grab it. And Lisa, I think we're done today.
I think so.
Yep. So we'll see you next time on the Drama Free Living Podcast.